Hello, my name is Netta Bianchi and welcome to the Kaplan MCAT Science Review video on social behavior. We'll begin by looking at the different types of social behavior, including attraction, aggression, and attachment. We'll then delve into what social support networks are and how they can benefit your health. Finally, we'll look at evolutionary fitness as it relates to social behaviors. Our learning goal is to understand the major categories of social behaviors and to be able to describe the biology behind attraction, aggression, attachment, and social behaviors. Our learning goal will enable us to answer questions like the following about why this frightening dog is exhibiting overly aggressive behavior. Social behavior is what allows us to interact with the people around us. These interactions can be positive in the case of attraction or negative in the case of aggression. On the positive side of things, we might consider how we choose who our best friends are or how we choose our partner in life. Social psychologists would place these two scenarios under the category of interpersonal attraction. Simply put, interpersonal attraction is the phenomenon of us liking other people, and there are several factors that influence our attraction to others. The first of those is appearance. Now, we might have heard that looks don't matter, but to a certain extent, psychologically at least, they do. People are attracted to symmetry, and body proportions or facial proportions that just about follow the golden ratio tend to be more attractive to us. Many actors and actresses fit for the big screen have facial features that follow that golden ratio. But appearance isn't everything. In fact, things like similarity also influence how attractive a person is to us. We tend to be attracted to people who have similar attitudes, beliefs, education, background as ourselves. This might be due to convenience, or it might be because we like to have our attitudes and beliefs validated by the people around us. But what about the cliche that opposites attract? Researchers have found that opposites can attract if their differences are complementary. For example, an individual who is a nurturer or likes to nurture other people would be attracted to someone who likes to be nurtured, and vice versa. Notice that they do have a difference, but their differences complement each other. It's also important to realize that most likely the people who are opposites are not opposites in every single respect. They most likely have some similarities as well. Self-disclosure also influences how attractive a person is to us. We tend to like it when we can share our fears, thoughts, and goals with someone, and that person empathizes with us or doesn't judge us. There's an element of reciprocity here as well. If I am divulging my deep, dark secrets to someone, it helps to deepen our relationship if that person also trusts me with his or her deep, dark secrets. When a person does not respond with self-disclosure, we tend to feel taken advantage of or vulnerable. Reciprocity itself also has an influence on attraction in general. Simply put, we like it when people like us, and we're more attracted to people who actually are attracted to us. Even individuals who might be arguing or disagreeing on certain topics tend to still hold an interest for each other if there's an indication of that interest. Finally, people who are in close proximity to us tend to be more attractive to us. This can be out of convenience. For example, students might find their friends in the dorm rooms because they're close to each other and can easily make plans. Proximity also has an element of familiarity or exposure. For example, we might see a classmate in every single class and are thus more attracted to them because we're more familiar with them. Now that we've broken down attraction into its various influences, let's explore aggression, another social behavior. Aggression is a behavior that's meant to be harmful or to move an individual up in the social ladder of dominance. These behaviors can be verbal, such as in an argument, or nonverbal, such as in a physical fight. While studies of aggression have mainly been done in animals, humans show aggression too. For example, to threaten someone, a man might puff up his chest and pull his fist back in a show of physical dominance or aggression. There are various biological factors that influence aggression. In the brain, the amygdala is responsible for determining if a specific situation is threatening or not. For example, if someone is trying to steal your Kaplan MCAT books, you might feel a little bit threatened, and your amygdala would activate. An activated amygdala promotes aggression in a threatening situation. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for controlling aggression. It does this by modulating impulsiveness and reducing emotional reactivity. When you face the pesky MCAT book thief, Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for making sure that you don't do anything rash. Individuals with less activity in their prefrontal cortex tend to be more impulsive or aggressive. Hormones also control aggression. Higher levels of testosterone have been shown to promote aggression. This might explain why a disproportionate amount of violent crimes are conducted by males. Our psychological state, or the situation that we're in, also influences how aggressive we are. The cognitive neoassociation model posits that when we have negative emotions, we tend to be more aggressive. So the association between hunger and being grumpy is explained by this model. When we're tired or hungry, we tend to be more snappy or irritated with the people around us. Other psychological states that influence aggression include being exposed to violent behavior as a child. We've looked at attraction and aggression as social behaviors, but let's check out attachment and see what this is. Attachment is an emotional bond that's forged between a caregiver and a child. Generally, the caregiver is a parental figure, but really it can be anyone that is responsive or sensitive to a child's needs. After World War II, psychiatrists noticed that isolation among orphan children had had a negative effect on their social and emotional development. He thus began the study of attachment, which psychologist Mary Ainsworth expanded upon. Ainsworth showed that infants required a consistent caregiver, especially during the first 6 months to 2 years of their life. Currently, we have 4 types of attachment identified. One of those is a good type of attachment, and the other 3 don't turn out so well. The secure attachment is considered the good attachment. In this situation, the child feels that the caregiver is consistent and reliable. The child can go out and explore and know that there's a secure base waiting for him or her. A child will also prefer to be in the comfort of the caregiver rather than strangers. These children with secure attachments tend to grow up with sufficient social skills. There are 3 less than ideal attachments that a caregiver can make with their child. In avoidant attachment, the caregiver essentially ignores the distressed child. In this scenario, the child tends not to care whether the caregiver is around or not, leaving or returning. In ambivalent attachment, the caregiver lacks consistency. Sometimes the caregiver responds appropriately to the child's distress, sometimes they're neglectful. For this reason, the child feels insecure about the caregiver. The child is distressed when the caregiver leaves, but might have a more ambivalent response when the caregiver returns. In disorganized attachment, the caregiver is either absent or, as the name suggests, disorganized. The child will then show a mix of different behaviors towards the caregiver because there's no consistency. In avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized attachment cases, the children tend to grow up with deficits in their social skills. As we interact with people around us, we begin to build a social support network of individuals who care about us. That network can include everyone from friends, family, community, neighbors, and even colleagues. There have been numerous studies that show the health benefits of a social support network. These include reduced anxiety and depression, reducing mental disorders, illicit drug use, and suicide ideation, reducing mortality from disease, and even improving our immune system. There are several types of social support that an individual can provide. The first of those is emotional support. In emotional support, an individual listens and empathizes with another person. For example, the next time you hear, "I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your job," you're witnessing empathy or emotional support, which helps to build a relationship. In esteem support, an individual encourages another person about their qualities or other positive attributes. For example, someone might tell you, "You've got a great resume. I'm sure you'll get hired soon." These type of comments are going to build the self-esteem of another person. In material support, an individual might provide financial or other material contributions. For example, your friend might say, "Let me get the check this time." Or your parents might help you out with tuition. Informational support involves giving someone information that might help them either in their career or health or in any other area. For example, if you need a job, your friend might say, "I hear my company is looking to hire."
Network support comes from your social support network, which was mentioned earlier in this video. The social network is essentially a group of individuals who care about you, and conducting actions such as a group hug give you a sense of belonging. In these 5 ways, individuals or groups of people can provide you with a support system. We might not notice it without thinking about it, but our family and friends that provide us with social support and surround us actually improve our health. Many social behaviors are intertwined with evolutionary fitness. Let's take a look at mating choices as an example of this relationship. There are several mating systems or organization of sexual behavior identified in animals. Monogamy is an exclusive relationship, so a male and a female are only mating with each other, no one else.
Polygamy has 2 branches. Polygyny is when a male has multiple exclusive female partners. Polyandry is when a female has multiple exclusive male partners. In promiscuity, there are no exclusive relationships, so a male or female mates with any member of the opposite sex. For the most part, animals have one dominant mating system, but humans are a little more complex. We have flexibility in our mating systems, so different biological and social factors can influence which mating system is deemed appropriate. Even differences in culture can lead to different mating systems. Within a mating system, our choice of mate is largely based on attraction, which is that social behavior we mentioned earlier in the video. There are several mechanisms, so to speak, that influence intersexual selection. For example, in genetic compatibility, the 2 members of a mating pair have genes that, when combined, complement each other. This can be hugely beneficial evolutionarily. If the 2 members of the mating pair have widely different genes, this can limit or reduce the frequency of recessive genetic disorders in the population. Animals might also choose their mates based on phenotypic benefits. These are qualities that are generally positive and lead to attraction. For example, being a nurturer is an attractive trait or quality. Many of these qualities are attractive because they allow for better care for the offspring, and this leads to evolutionary fitness among the species. While phenotypic benefits are qualities, indicator traits are physical traits, and these traits tend to show that an organism is healthy. For example, this dog's full shiny coat is an indicator of his good nutrition. In Fisherian or runaway selection, an indicator trait goes beyond usefulness. A trait that really has no effect on the actual survival of the organism is deemed sexually desirable and then is passed on over the generations. As it's passed on, it becomes more and more exaggerated, and then again becomes more likely to be passed on. Probably the most common example of this is a peacock's plumage, which really has no bearing on the actual survival of the peacock, but is a sexually desirable trait and can lead to mating and evolutionary fitness. The choice of mate is not the only evolutionarily significant decision that an organism makes. Game theory attempts to describe decision-making behavior. It's essentially a way to model social interactions and then relate them to evolution. Let's use an example to see what this actually means. Imagine that organism 1 and organism 2 are interacting within an environment. These interactions could be anything from territorial to food-related. Each of the organisms can choose to share their resources or not. If the organism does share the resources, they'll be considered cooperative and be designated by a positive sign. If the organism chooses not to share the resources, he'll be considered hostile and be designated by a negative sign. There are several different relationships that can emerge from these interactions. If both organism 1 and organism 2 choose not to share their resources, a spiteful relationship emerges, in which the 2 organisms might be fighting for the resources. If organism 1 chooses not to share the resources and organism 2 does, organism 1 is considered selfish. If organism 1 does choose to share the resources and 2 does not, then 1 is being altruistic. Lastly, if both organisms choose to share the resources, a cooperative relationship emerges. Notice that the terms altruism and selfishness were used to refer to organism 1. When a given population in a given environment adopts a specific strategy for enabling fitness, the strategy is essentially passed on as a trait. So when an evolutionary stable strategy is adopted by a population, Natural selection makes sure that no other strategies come into play. The MCAT also wants you to know about inclusive fitness, which is essentially how successful an organism is in the population. Initially, inclusive fitness was referring to how many viable offspring an organism might have. But recently, theories have been accounting for how a specific behavior impacts the population as a whole. This is important because it's difficult to understand altruism at an individual level. Why would organism 1 donate all of his food to organism 2 when there's no benefit for organism 1? From an evolutionary standpoint, organism 1 would be less likely to have viable offspring. Inclusive fitness allows us to describe altruism in an evolutionary sense. Organisms might sacrifice themselves so that their family or close kin can survive and then propagate the family genes. In the game theory example, organism 1 and organism 2 might be sisters. So organism 1 might sacrifice her food resources so that organism 2 can live to pass on the genes. While inclusive fitness does provide one solution to the problem of altruism, it's actually still an issue that evolutionary biologists are attempting to understand. For example, it's difficult to understand why complete strangers would be altruistic to one another. In this case, they're not closely related. Now, let's see how the MCAT might test the concepts we've learned in this video. Read and answer the practice question. The answer is A. Theories of attachment suggest that the type of bond we create with our caregiver as infants influences the type of attachments we have later in life. In this case, Bobby currently has positive attachments. Secure attachment is the only good attachment that results in positive relationships later in life. If you had trouble with this question, review the types of attachment that can occur in infancy. Try your hand at this question. Read and answer the practice question. The answer is C. Remember that testosterone is a hormone that promotes aggression. If you had trouble with this question, go back and review the various biological influences of aggression. Read and answer this practice question. The answer is B. Polygyny is a type of polygamy in which a male has multiple exclusive female partners. Different cultures or populations might have different mating systems that are considered acceptable or appropriate. If you had trouble with this question, review the type of mating systems. Let's look at some of the takeaways from this video. Attraction is the phenomenon of individuals liking each other and can be influenced by appearance, similarity, self-disclosure, reciprocity, and proximity, which were all described earlier in this video. Aggressive behaviors are those that are meant to cause harm. In aggression, the amygdala is activated and can be modulated by the prefrontal cortex. Remember that increased testosterone increases aggression. Attachment is a bond that's forged between a caregiver and a child. It can be positive, such as in the case of secure attachment, or have negative influences, such as in the case of avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized attachment. Social support comes in many forms, including emotional, esteem, material, informational, and network support. This support can come from anyone, from your colleagues to your family members. Lastly, social behaviors and decisions such as mating choices have an influence on evolutionary fitness. Theories such as the game theory and inclusive fitness describe the relationship between social behaviors and evolution. Thank you for watching the Kaplan MCAT Science Review video on social behavior.